Well, I want to start this video by saying two words: Fernando Alonso. I guess you could add another two words to that: Aston Martin. They look like the real deal, don't they? They look good, they look fast. Obviously, well, let's have a quick look at before I go into the team selection. If we flick over to the spreadsheet, we can see the times from FP1 and FP2 set this afternoon. And look at that, Fernando Alonso over here in P2 and in P1. Just it looks hooked up, doesn't it? And when you look at the longer runs as well in the latter part of FP2 this afternoon, which is quite representative of actual race and qualifying conditions, the Aston Martin looked basically on par with the Red Bull, particularly in the hands of Fernando Alonso. We see Lance Stroll down here as well, over here in P6, which is really promising because Stroll, we know, has sort of struggled through qualifying all last year. So to see him up there in P6 is kind of encouraging. Although I will say one thing quickly, if we go back to my last year's data that I collected, we can see Fernando Lance Stroll down here is 13 times out of the 15 races I collected data on, he actually went backwards from practice. So we could see Lance Stroll carry on that trend. I don't know if that was more related to the car itself or the fact that maybe, sorry, I'm just flicking around here. Maybe it was related to Stroll himself. I don't know. But even if Stroll does sort of move back from his P6 position where he's at the moment and qualifies, maybe he just hooks it up in I don't know, P8, P9, P10, something like that. With the race pace in the Aston Martin that we've seen so far, that could be kind of gold dust, because he's going to move forward in the race most likely. The Mercedes look all at sea. Alpine look kind of okay. The Alfa Romeos look kind of okay as well. But yeah, I think the Aston Martin, in Stroll, if he does qualify a little bit further back than what he should be, then we could see some really, really big points coming in from Aston Martin. And then, yeah, I think Red Bull as well, they struggled slightly in particularly in FP1. I know both Perez and Max were getting on the radio saying it didn't feel quite right. It was better in testing, and there's a little bit of murmurs coming out of the Red Bull camp that things weren't quite right. But they seem to have ironed those things out in FP2, and we've obviously still got FP3 to go as well. So I'm more than happy to sort of stick with my Red Bull back in my fantasy team. Apart from that, the Ferraris, you can see there, not great. I mean, Carlos Sainz, he had that big spin basically, didn't he, going into turn 9, 10 sort of area. So yeah, I think the Ferraris are not looking as quick as we anticipated, and I did have the build in mind of going with Ferrari as my second constructor. But yeah, it looks like, in fact, let's throw over to the team straight away. I think it looks like it's almost a no-brainer to put the Red Bull alongside the super ultra cheap Aston Martins in my team. Like I said, we've still got FP3 to go, so this isn't set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. And I will say one thing is that Lance Stroll, this is a concern a few days ago, which I mentioned, and I've now seen Lance Stroll get back in the car, and we've seen him genuinely struggle. He set some good pace, it still looks quite good, but his wrists are clearly still really bothering him. We saw, I don't know if anyone's watched the footage from FP2 in particular, you can see he's not turning the wheel properly. Going into turn 1, he's literally taken his left hand off the wheel and having to put it underneath the wheel and kind of hook it over to turn the car. So can he really last the 57 lap race distance on Sunday? That has me really concerned. Not concerned enough to back out of Aston Martin, but it does have me the concerns about putting Lance Stroll in my actual team. But anyway, let's fill in the rest of the guys that I'm currently looking at. No surprises really to see Fernando and Max Verstappen in there. That leaves me 30 million. And now in my team selection video from a few days ago, I did sort of dabble with Ferrari options, but Ferrari just don't quite excite me. And I will say that the team selection I'm picking here is slightly worrying. If anything does happen, if there is a DNF, then it's pretty hard hitting. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with the triple up on Red Bull, and I'm tempted by the triple up on Aston Martin as well. That's how much confidence I have with them. And then that leaves me the 5.4 million, which I think the best of the rest is probably Guan Yu Zhou at 4.9. The Alfa Romeo looks quite decent. He got in the top 10 in FP2 there. I think at 4.9 million, that's a really good price for your budget driver, because this season fantasy is super top heavy in point scoring, so you want to try and maximize everyone that's going to get in the top 10. I think out of the budget, Guan Yu Zhou is probably the best bet. It's a bit tight, I would say, down there. I think Hulkenberg is probably the next best option. Or if you want to just keep it super safe and hoped for reliability and staying out of trouble, then maybe even Logan Sargent or Alex Albon, who, the general pace of the Williams doesn't look great. But yeah, This is the team I'm kind of looking at the moment. I'm not really looking too far past it. The only thing I am slightly concerned about, like I said, is Lance Stroll here in the middle. If I wasn't sort of convinced entirely by Lance Stroll, then I could go for Valtteri Bottas and double up in the Alfa Romeos and just hope they can just sort of squeak into the top 10 and get just a couple of points maybe, or get involved in some scraps in the midfield and pick up some overtake points possibly. But yeah, I think if I don't know, like Lance Stroll, there was also some pictures of Lance Stroll getting out of the car, and he looked like completely crippled, basically trying to get out of the car. He had to be helped out by some engineers or mechanics, whoever they were, helped him out of the car. So it does really concern me, I'm not going to lie, about Lance Stroll's fitness. And as of the time of recording this, he's still going to be racing, still going to be qualifying. But I wouldn't completely put it past Aston Martin and also the FIA to possibly step in and say like he's not fit to race, and then we'd see Felipe Drugovich sort of thrown in at the deep end with like one practice session and straight into qualifying sort of thing. So that has my concerns about Aston Martin, but just the general pace of the car and the fact that in fantasy that their assets are just underpriced. I think Lance Stroll's probably kind of, well, actually, no, Lance Stroll's, who am I kidding? Lance Stroll's also underpriced given the pace of the car he's driving. But so yeah, I think at the moment, I think this is like in my opinion, the optimal team. Like I say, if because of how hard hitting the DNFs are, it is a bit worrying. For example, if Lance Stroll does DNF because he can't drive the car anymore because his wrists are like literally broken, then that's -20 for him. It's -20 for Aston Martin. Suddenly you got -40 staring at you in the face. All it takes is one other thing from like Perez or Verstappen to randomly DNF. And by the way, Verstappen's DNF rate around Bahrain is not great. I'm not going to lie. We saw the double DNF from Red Bull last year. So this team, although I think it's probably got the highest ceiling, also has a pretty big flaw. If anyone DNFs, it's going to hurt big time. So you could kind of sidestep that a little bit. You could cut out the two middlemen here, and then you could go for one of the Ferraris who look to be third best team. Like Fernando wasn't lying the other day by the looks of it, and then that can bring in maybe you sort of spread your bets a little bit and go Pierre Gasly. He looked fairly decent, I think. Where was he? He was completely and utterly lost him on here. Oh, P17. Okay, not as quite as good as I thought he was in FP1, but then he popped up in P7 in FP2. So yeah, Gasly still could be a good shout. I think Alpine's it's hard to tell still, but I think they're kind of there or thereabouts, just on the fringes of that top 10 and could push into top 10 and claim a few points. So if I was a bit overly worried about the whole DNF factor, and the impact of having a DNF if you've tripled up on two teams is pretty hard hitting, then I could spread the risk a little bit. Obviously it increases your chances of getting a DNF because you'll then spread over further number of drivers, but if you do get the DNF, it kind of reduces the hit a little bit, so it's kind of a bit of a balancing act. I think in terms of pure points potential, I think the best team at the moment without seeing FP3, I think this is the best team. In my humble opinion, because what do I know? Just some random guy on the internet, but there you go. So I think this is kind of where I'm settling at the moment. Like I say, I want to see more news about Lance Stroll and his fitness, and if Felipe Drugovich comes in, how that's going to affect things. If I am completely off Lance Stroll and I'm scared, or Drugovich comes in or whatever, then I think it's either Bottas or maybe one of the Hazes. Magnussen struggled a little bit, so it could even be dropping down as far as Hulkenberg. But I think probably the most sensible thing is just go Bottas, go with a team like this. That's kind of where I'm at the moment. That's where my head's at. That's what I'm thinking. Obviously, we've got FP3 to come, and I will be live streaming into the deadline. I think I'm more or less set on this, but FP3 is to come. Lance Stroll news and fitness is to come. And who knows what else can happen. This is F1, anything can happen. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. These are my pseudo final thoughts, because they're not my final thoughts, because I'm going to be doing the live stream going into the deadline. So yeah, come join me for that. We'll analyse what's gone on in FP3, and we'll lock in our teams, and the season begins in earnest. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. These are my final thoughts for now, and I'll catch you in the live stream hopefully. So yeah, thanks and bye bye.